Hey guys, let's talk about books. It's my cat just knocking the whole tripod situation. So these are the books that I picked up in February 2024. Now, until the 29th of February, this pile, which is only 6 books, was half this pile. So that was lucky they all scraped in that extra day of the year. But also, I've already read half of these. They're just adding to my physical corpse trophy shelf collection. So I feel like that makes it a more modest haul in itself because it's less to get hype about. Does that make sense? Whatever. We collect books for our own reasons, and these are my reasons because I want them. The first one I haven't read and I'm very excited about, it is Martha Wells' Witch King. This came out not that long ago, 2023, that's last year. Martha Wells writes the Murderbot Diaries. Let me read you the blurb and then, I don't have a blurb. Let me read you the blurb off my phone and then we'll talk about why I'm excited for this book. The phone blurb says, after being murdered, his consciousness dormant and unaware of the passing of time, while confined in an elaborate water trap, Cayenne awakes to find a lesser mage attempting to harness Kai's magic to his own advantage. That was never going to go well. But why was Kai imprisoned in the first place? What has changed in the world since his assassination? And why does the rising world coalition appear to be growing in influence? Kai will need to pull his allies close and draw on all his pain magic if he is to answer even the least of these questions. He's not going to like the answers. So Martha Wells, before she wrote science fiction, wrote fantasy. She's got a lot of backlist fantasy titles that I haven't read. But somebody told me in one of my Discord book groups that this was one of the best books they read. Definitely the best Martha Wells book, fantastic fantasy. It had been on my radar, so that was my sign to adopt it into my life. It's a chunky fantasy. It comes in at just over 400 pages, although like they're big type pages, which make, floppy. Floppy books are easier to read. So that will make it more comfortable to read in a physical format. I'm just hype. I'm excited for some epic fantasy. It's been a while since I've read some. So, and I like the way that Wells writes Murderbot, the style of that. So I'm hoping that carries over. Obviously, it's an entirely different genre and characters and whatever. But the style, I'm hoping carries over. So I'm excited. Next in my pile is The Magic Mountain by Thomas Mann. This is a classic. This is the vintage classics version that I grabbed because I like all these pops of red spines on my shelf. That is by the by. This came out in 1924, so it is a classic. And the blurb reads, Hans Castorp is a perfectly ordinary if engaging young man when he goes to visit his cousin in an exclusive sanatorium in the Swiss Alps. What should have been a 3-week trip turns into a 7-year stay. Hans falls in love and becomes intoxicated with the ideas he hears at the clinic, ideas which will strain and crack apart a world on the verge of the First World War. I have picked this up because Olga Tokarczuk, who is a favourite around these parts, has a book coming out in September, which is based not on this book, but in this world, I think. It is a horror based in the sanatorium. And so to get the full context of that book, it's The Impusium coming in September. My friend Luke and I are going to buddy read this in preparation and excitement. So that's going to be a winter read. Look how thick that is. This one comes in at, 725 pages-ish. So that might actually end up being a Kindle read, even though I do have this physical copy just because of the heft of it. But I am so excited for the Olga Tokarczuk. So this is homework in advance. But getting another spooky classic under my belt isn't going to hurt. This is one that I've read. This Warriors of God by Andrzej Sapkowski. It was translated by David French. Yep, David French. It originally came out in 2004. The English version was 2021. I have read this on Kindle and I was gifted off my Amazon wishlist the first book in this trilogy. This is a trilogy called the Hussite trilogy. It's set in a alternate history. alternate fantasy history world of our world in the Hussite Crusades, which is the 16th century. I'm saying off the top of my head. It is predominantly historical fiction with some magic. And the blurb is: the second volume of the Hussite trilogy by the best-selling author of The Witcher takes Rainoven, scoundrel, magician, possibly a fool, into the depths of war as he attempts to navigate the religious fervours of the 15th century. 15th century. Rainoven begins by hiding away in Bohemia, but soon leaves for Silesia, where he carries out dangerous secret missions entrusted to him by the leaders of the Hussite religion. At the same time, he strives to avenge the death of his brother and discover the whereabouts of his beloved. Once again pursued by multiple enemies, Rainoven must contend with danger on every front. It's not bad in terms of a historical fiction. It's not a case of, look, Ma, I did the research with info dumps. But it is an interesting read. We follow our hero, Rainoven, as he is now conscripted into the Hussite side of the Hussite Crusade, and he is fully converted to the cause. He fully believes in it. But again, as in the first book, his penis gets him into a bit of strife. The Hussites, if I'm remembering correctly, are followers of Jan Hus. And there's lots of cults and sects that believe different things, but predominantly they argued for, how do I put it in English? They argued for taking both bread and wine at communion. Previously to that, you could only take one or none. Communion on a regular basis was not a thing in the medieval period for a long time. This is coming towards the end of the 15th century, is the end of the medieval period. And the Hussites broadly, it's very generic, broadly wanted the communion of bread and wine, blood and body of Christ. And that's why they were fighting the Pope. Then I grabbed a second-hand one, which smells like a second-hand book. And I'm really enjoying it. This is How to Talk About Books by Pierre Bayard, translated by Jeffrey Melman from French. This was published in 2007. I was translated the year it was published in French. Interesting. Let me read you the blurb. How and why do we spend so much time talking about books we've only heard about, skimmed, or read once and have forgotten? In this mischievous and provocative book, Pierre Bayard contends that the truly cultivated person does not need to read books. Understanding their place in our culture is enough. I understand the irony of reading a book to tell me that I don't need to read books, but also it just sounds interesting. And I'm hoping will help me talk more cogently about the things that I do actually read, because that's why we're here, is the things that I do actually read. But how to talk about those books is a different story. This, because it's secondhand, I got it off World of Books. I don't have a bookstore near me. It's got a bookmark in it, which I don't know if you can see in this light. It's just a piece of sparkly pink paper, and on the back it says in pink writing, and I'm sitting here in the dark, Lizzie, bringing style and cool to the library. So obviously this book was meant to come to me, to my library. I'm really excited to get into this one. It might be the next physical one that I'll go to, because it's quite small, just under 200 pages. This one I also read and picked up secondhand because I listened to it, but for uni I needed a physical copy. And there's Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. This is the 1818 text, which came out in 1818. What a shocker. The blurb here. I mean, you know what Frankenstein's about. Frankenstein is the most celebrated horror story ever written. It tells the dreadful tale of Victor Frankenstein, a visionary young student of natural philosophy who discovers the secret of life. In the grip of his obsession, he constructs a being from dead body parts and animates this creature. The results for Victor and his family are catastrophic. Now, I'm going to tell you, you don't need to read this book. Take this book's advice. You know what happens in this book. I did not enjoy it. I'm about to film a review of it. Nonetheless, it's interesting to have put into my brain parts. And I did read it for a uni subject on Gothic literature, of which this is the earliest published in the list of books I had to read for that review forthcoming. Another one that I read and I loved and I was so excited to get a real copy of, and that is Nettle and Bone by T. Kingfisher. This one was published in... Ooh! Look at that. Can you see? Little skull. That's so cute. This was published in 2022 and I read it last year, I think. I will link my review. I read it for a book club, but it's just so much fun. The blurb says, after years of seeing her sisters suffer at the hands of an abusive prince, Mara, the shy convent-raised third-born daughter, has finally realized that no one is coming to the rescue. No one, except for Mara herself. Seeking help from a powerful grave witch, Mara is offered the tools to kill a prince, if she can complete 3 impossible tasks. But, as is the way in tales of princes, witches, and daughters, the impossible is only the beginning. On her quest, Mara is joined by the grave witch, a reluctant fairy godmother, a strapping former knight, and a chicken possessed by a demon. Together, the 5 of them intend to be the hand that closes around the throat of the prince and frees Mara's family and their kingdom from its tyrannous ruler at last. Definitely dark fairy tale vibes, found family vibes, a gentle romance. It's just really sweet, really nice. I think the book club, when we read it, described it as grim cozy because the themes are dark as, but the story is cozy as. Highly recommend that you put this in your eyeballs if it sounds good to you. And that is my short but sweet haul. 6 books is fairly respectable considering it was only 3 books a couple of days ago. Thanks for hanging out with me and talking about books, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.